18 years inside a family business before everything changed. I didn't grow up dreaming of inheriting a company. I grew up inside one. While other kids spent weekends at parks, I spent mine in a furniture warehouse. The smell of wood dust in the air, the sound of machines humming like a second heartbeat. Brooks Fine Furniture wasn't just my parents' business, it was the place where I learned responsibility before I learned freedom. My father liked to tell people, "We built this company from nothing." What he never mentioned was how early I became part of that nothing. I was 16 when I started helping, not because I was forced, but because I wanted to belong. I sorted invoices, answered phones, cleaned offices after school. No pay, no praise, just the quiet understanding that this was family. By the time I graduated college, joining the company full-time felt inevitable. No celebration, no announcement. My father pointed to a desk near the back wall. "Start there," he said. And that was it. The early years were brutal. I worked longer hours than anyone my age. I learned suppliers' names before I learned how to say no. When something went wrong, it somehow became my responsibility. But when something went right, it was the family's success. I didn't mind, because every year the company grew, and so did my belief that loyalty meant something. When my father fell ill, everything changed. Suddenly, decisions landed on my desk. Suddenly, employees came to me with problems. Suddenly, the company depended on me more than it ever had. I didn't panic. I adapted. I renegotiated contracts, modernized sales systems, built relationships my parents never had time for. Profits rose, stability returned. My parents slept peacefully at night, and I thought, this is it. This is what earning trust feels like. Then my younger brother came back. Ethan. 4 years younger, always confident, always certain the world would adjust to him. He hadn't worked in the business before. He said he was exploring options. But the moment he walked through those doors, something shifted. My mother smiled more. My father listened differently. Ethan spoke loudly in meetings, even when he didn't know what he was talking about. People laughed. I stayed quiet. At first, it was subtle. I stopped being invited to certain discussions. My ideas were interesting, but never acted on. One afternoon, I overheard my mother say, "She's good at details, but Ethan has leadership energy." That sentence lodged itself deep inside me, because details are what keep companies alive. Energy fades. Still, I said nothing, because confronting family felt wrong, because I believed years of dedication couldn't be erased overnight. I believed wrong. The invitation came on a Friday afternoon, a short message from my father. Meeting Monday, 9 a.m., conference room. No context, no explanation. When I arrived that morning, the blinds were closed. The air felt heavy. And sitting at the table was someone I didn't expect. A lawyer. That's when I understood. This wasn't a conversation. It was a decision, already made. My father cleared his throat. My mother avoided my eyes. Ethan leaned back in his chair, relaxed. And in that moment, after 18 years of loyalty, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't being invited into the future. I was being removed from it. And I had no idea how far they were willing to go, or how much power I still unknowingly held. The lawyer didn't speak at first. He just sat there, hands folded, watching me like I was already a problem to be managed. My father cleared his throat again. "Victoria," he said, "we've decided to restructure the company." That word, restructure, was always used when someone was about to lose something. I stayed calm. "What does that mean for me?" I asked. No one answered. Instead, the lawyer slid a folder across the table. White paper, neatly stapled, my name at the top. I knew what it was before I even touched it. A resignation letter. Already written, already dated, already decided. For a moment, I didn't feel angry. I felt detached. 18 years of my life reduced to a single page. The letter praised my contributions, thanked me for my support, then politely asked me to step aside for the future leadership of the company. Future leadership. I didn't need to look up to know who that meant, but I did anyway. Ethan met my eyes and smiled, not proudly, not cruelly, comfortably, like someone watching a door close from the inside. The severance offer sat at the bottom, a number so small it felt like a joke. 6 months. 6 months for 18 years? I let out a short laugh before I could stop myself. My mother finally spoke. "Please don't take this personally." Personally? This was my life. They started explaining how I was too close to the details, how I was emotionally invested, how Ethan needed space to grow. The lawyer added words like transition and mutual agreement. I heard none of it. All I could think was, they planned this. They planned this without me. I asked one question. Why didn't anyone talk to me first? My father sighed, like I was being difficult. We didn't want to argue. That hurt more than anything else. They didn't want to argue, so they chose to erase me instead. I stood up slowly. "I'll review this with my attorney," I said. The lawyer stiffened. My mother frowned. "There's no need to escalate this," she said. "We're family." Family. Funny how that word only mattered when it was convenient. I walked out of the building I had helped build. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, I didn't know where I belonged. That night, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop. Not to vent, not to complain, to remember. I pulled up old emails, contracts, supplier agreements. Names and dates came back to me like muscle memory. I remembered meetings where I'd insisted on certain clauses and been told I was overthinking. I remembered my father saying, "Fine, if it makes you feel better." It hadn't been about feelings. It had been about protection. Around midnight, I saw it. One contract, then another, then another. Patterns forming. Authorization clauses, transition conditions, exclusivity agreements. I felt my chest tighten. Not from fear, from clarity. They hadn't just pushed me out. They had done it without understanding what I controlled. I wrote my resignation letter carefully. No emotion, no accusation, just professionalism. At the very end, I added a single sentence. Short, precise. I read it 3 times, then I sent it. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Ms. Brooks," the voice said, tight and formal. "This is the company's legal counsel." I smiled for the first time in days, because now the conversation was finally about to change. The lawyer didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. That's how I knew he was scared. "Ms. Brooks," he said carefully, "we need clarification regarding the final sentence in your resignation." I leaned back in my chair. "Which part?" I asked. There was a pause. Then he read it out loud. The sentence, the one they hadn't paid attention to. I explained slowly, not to be cruel, but to be clear. I told him that between 2012 and 2024, I had been the authorized signatory on multiple supplier and exclusivity agreements. I explained that several of those contracts required my written approval for any leadership transition. Without it, suppliers were legally allowed to pause or walk away. Silence. Heavy silence. Then the lawyer said the words I knew were coming. "How soon can you come in?" By the end of that day, my parents called. Not to argue, to talk. My father's voice was different now. Lower, slower. My mother sounded tired. They said there had been complications, that things were moving too fast. Ethan didn't speak. That told me everything. Within a week, things started to unravel quietly. Not in headlines, not dramatically. The worst way. A shipment delayed. A client asked for reassurance. An investor requested documentation. Questions no one could answer because the person who knew the answers had already been pushed out. They offered me a new deal. More money, a title. Temporary support, they called it. I declined. Not because I was angry, but because I was finished. I accepted a consulting role elsewhere, a company that asked questions before making decisions. I didn't look back often, but when I did, I saw the difference. Meetings ran longer. Deadlines slipped. People left. Ethan tried, but confidence without foundation collapses under pressure. Months later, my father sent me a message. No accusations, no excuses, just one line. "We didn't realize how much you were holding together." I stared at it for a long time, then closed my phone. I learned something important. Family loyalty doesn't replace preparation, and respect should never be assumed. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't anger. It's understanding the rules better than everyone else and writing one sentence at the right moment.